But no, I was playing football last night, and like when you play in five-a-side against those guys who just like don't recognise that it's a Thursday night and they're like taking it so seriously. Anyway, they were just like my mate Dylan. He was our best player, and they just kept on kicking his legs off. And the referee was giving us nothing. So I tried to prove a point by literally just doing full Bruno. And I was in the corner. Someone like kicked me, didn't get any of the ball. So I just threw myself in the air. I must have had an air time of about 2.8 seconds or something. I'm like a sardine coming out the sea, and threw myself on the floor. I actually hit my head diving. It was that bad. But it was a
dive, like hand on heart dive.
It was a dive. I exaggerated at what was a foul. One of them ones where you've definitely been fouled. But
I'm imagining Ashley Young. Remember when he went through that period where he just kicked people and fall over?
Yeah, it's exactly like that. So yeah, that happened and we lost. It was annoying then because I threw myself to the ground. I know, and I was doing all the histrionics, and they meant nothing, and they were just getting at us. They must have been in their 30s. They were giving us all loads of slack about us being smaller than them and being younger than them, and it was just kind of annoying to lose to those guys, to be honest with you. But yeah, then I went home. I listened to the Jackmate podcast, which I love. Good inspiration for well, it's not really inspiration, is it? It's completely.
Yeah, I was going to say the tactical, like us as like people compared to Jackmate. Like Jackmate's all about fun, and we're like the most serious tacticos.
Yeah, we are very serious. No, literally, yeah. I don't think there'd be any clips of me doing little circles around my chair making pig noises, but that was a very funny moment anyway. But yeah, we're here. We've got quite a lot to talk about. What have you been up to, mate? Because it's been a while, hasn't it, really?
Yeah, I mean, last time we spoke, I feel like every time we've spoke on the pod, there's always some Ineos development going on.
Yeah, there is,
but
yeah.
I think in terms of what we've got set up for today, there is a lack of Ineos, which might be a good thing for some people because we're talking more about the topical stuff going on the football pitch. And what's going on sort of around Man United right now is very divisive. I feel like it's been Man United versus the world. It's been Ten Hag versus the world, Bruno Fernandes versus the world. The media has just been really pulling together some opposition to what Ten Hag's going on, and in some cases it's rightly so. There's very just criticisms to be made. So the kind of setup for today's episode is basically going through all the topical stuff where the media and there have been criticisms against Manchester United, Ten Hag, and the players, and going through quite logically both arguments, because there is a side for the criticism, there is a side for Ten Hag and what Man United have got going on. But here's something that might be a bit out of your comfort zone. It might be out of mine. We're not allowed to do any fence sitting. We can come up with the logical assessments. We can be like, oh, this is an argument here, this is an argument there. But at the end of it, Isaac, I want a verdict from both of us, whether the Man United camp is correct in this scenario or the media is correct in this scenario. So just a list of topics that we're going to go through just before we jump into it. Again, sort of inspired by the content you've been putting out on United Cloud. We've got media and teams targeting Bruno Fernandes. Ten Hag has recently made a couple comments on that. Rashford dropped an really insightful article yesterday with the Players Tribune. Very Rashford versus media, Rashford versus the world. Doubting his commitment. So that's a very good topic to go into. And then we've got Ten Hag's battles with the media. We've got Ten Hag versus Carragher. Carragher did a piece on Monday Night Football. Ten Hag just generally trying to, rationalise the results and performances we've been seeing from Man United. And also some internal discussions from United fans on whether Ten Hag is, in fact, the right guy. So that's the setup for today's episode, Isaac. What are your thoughts on the whole sort of scenario around Man United and how divisive it has been in the last couple of weeks?
I think I tweeted something the other day saying, it just sums up where we are at the moment, that most of the fans, or at least a lot of the fans whose opinions I quite respect, more tactical heads as well, like a lot of the fans kind of would not be against Ten Hag being sacked. Yeah, he's nominated for Premier League Manager of the Month. I think it just sums it all up at the moment, doesn't it, really? It's it's been a bit of a pragmatic, up and down sort of mess in pretty much every sense possible. I don't know. I was at the Fulham game last weekend, and that was a really frustrating waste of time, to be honest with you. And I was shocked because I saw some better things in terms of how regularly Dallo was inverting and how we were building up, and there were some better things that looked good, but none of it worked, and it was lethargic, and there was no one able to beat a man. I thought, Forson was chucked in at the deep end, and you could tell he was chucked in at the deep end. Rashford was wasted through the middle. I don't know why he changed the dynamics of the front three. He should have just played Forson or whoever striker and kept Rashford and Garnacho where they were, because we had something good. And I thought that the reason why he played Forson, not Anthony, was because he was thinking about the long term, where he'd want to keep Garnacho on the right and Rashford on the left and have those dynamics. But again, it just became a pragmatic short term thing. And Ten Hag's again still caught in this weird compromise, and it's just really annoying because you're getting all this crazy stuff in the media and our results and everything around the club. It all stems from the fact that we're just caught between a rock and a hard place between, is it short term, is it long term? And it's frustrating, to be fair.
It does feel, don't you think, sort of, I don't want to make it doom and gloom, but the months before, the criticism that Ollie received in terms of lack of identity, and it was the start of the end when them criticisms started to become more tangible and more prominent in the media, because that's sort of the straw that broke Ollie's back. And I feel like in this sense, Ten Hag's starting to get the same criticisms, and in some cases, rightly so. And do you think this could be a big period in Ten Hag's United career right now?
Well, definitely, it does feel like it's sort of now or never. I thought that these two games coming up now, we had Forest and City. We obviously beat Forest, and that was a really important result for him. I think that now means he can afford to lose a City game. But I was thinking, well, if he loses both of these two, which is very plausible, then he's out the FA Cup and he's lost a derby, which is expected, but still would be a bad result. Then you're in a position where you're thinking, well, that's 3 in a row. Ineos could just say, right, that's it. Our minds are made up. We're going to start looking at other managers now. But he obviously beat Forest, which is very important. So I do think it's very much like it feels again like he's on a game-to-game basis. The pressure is very, very high. It always is high at United, and I think Fernandes has something to that effect the other day himself. And Rooney said on punditry after the FA Cup game, he knows what it's like. It is, every game is a crisis. And Ten Hag did say to the interviewer, well, we're actually undefeated in 2024 other than Fulham. And I think it is quite difficult to lose sight, or quite easy to lose sight of that, given the fact that the performances have been so underwhelming. And I think that is something you've got to consider. This is all a long-term thing now. We're not, even if Ten Hag is trying to win every game, as it comes to survive in his job, the entire idea now is we're building for next season. This season isn't really anywhere near where we want to be. Even if we do win the FA Cup and get top 4, we want to be competing for the title in the Champions League. So it's still not what we want to be. Obviously, getting top 4, winning the FA Cup would be great. But I think it gets to the point where everyone's got to realise that we're in this for the long term. This is a long-term thing, and it doesn't feel like that at the moment. It's really weird.
So we'll talk about the long term and more about Ten Hag. We'll park Ten Hag for now, and we'll jump into just something you've said about the Forest game in general, and our main topic area, the first topic area of Bruno Fernandes. He's obviously got a lot said about him after the Forest game. Ten Hag came out and said that Forest players were targeting him, and then recently he's also said that the media have been targeting him, and the likes of clubs like Fulham posting about Ten Hag, which I think is a bit of a ridiculous video in terms of it makes Bruno look a bit silly, and fair enough, it's just a bit of banter, but it's odd seeing the manager reference that directly. I just wanted to talk about Bruno Fernandes in general, and whether the criticisms of Bruno being our captain and Ten Hag's response to him being unfairly treated. What do you make of that?
Well, I'm the captain of my five-a-side team, and I was diving around like an idiot yesterday, so I can't be too critical here. But no, I do think the media there is very much a clear social media perception of Manchester United players, and definitely one that transcends that and actually goes into the game, and the referees seem to share. It's Bruno, but it's also Casemiro, right? And what I want to say is Bruno Fernandes is consistently targeted by teams, who know that he has a reputation for diving and going down. I think there's so many times this season where Fernandes hasn't had free kicks when he really should have done because the referees have just looked over it. Fernandes was strangled by Felipe in the Nottingham Forest game, and if Casemiro had done that, well, what Casemiro did to Will Hughes was nowhere near as bad. He would be sent off. It's all reputation, right? And it's probably the referee sees as Bruno Fernandes being strangled rather than say, I don't know, Diogo Dalot, and maybe takes a more dim view on it. I mean, this is obviously all like, whataboutery, and I'm not here for whataboutery, but it is clear that there are narratives against some of our players that exist on social media and within the actual confines of the match. So I'm someone who's always defended Bruno, and I think that he cares deeply about the club, and that might not always come out in the most savoury of ways, but I think he's someone who deeply cares, who is capable of motivating those around him, and he shows his passion every time he plays, and I think no one can ever doubt that. So I think as a leader, I understand why people might think his style is not quite right, in that he is maybe too emotional.
What's your ideal leader, Isaac? If you're going to paint one like sort of perfect leader on the football pitch, what is it?
Well, I think you need that. There's a balance, isn't there? Because when you act like that, when you have the histrionics, and when you have the overzealous displays of passion like Fernandes does, you need to be able to back it up by having a cool head and not actually losing your head yourself. And you also need to not look like an idiot. Now, I think it's very easy to look like an idiot doing that. I mean, the easiest way to not look like an idiot is to win the game. I'm speaking a lot from experience here, from literally what happened to me last night, by the way. But yeah, if you have, like, for example, Roy Keane, right? Nasty, will indulge in this sort of side, this dirtier side of the game, not just in terms of putting in nasty tackles, but making a fuss about things, screaming at referees, probably not being the most sportsman-like. But if you have something like that, that's probably more where you want to go. Someone who's like got the respect and the command with it. I'm not sure Fernandes has always had that, but I don't think it's fair.
I just wanted to pick up on something there. Like, I feel like the main thing I take away from it, which is my biggest criticism of the media. So this whole episode's about sort of taking sides and making verdicts. My biggest criticism of the media is that it's only ever a problem when United are losing. When we're winning and Bruno Fernandes is throwing his arms about, obviously now he's picked up a bit of a reputation for it, so he will get criticised. But I think back to Hannibal Mabry being subbed on against Liverpool and just causing a fuss, like pushing Liverpool players, basically looking to start a fight. And Gary Neville in commentary at that point, when United players looked dejected, his perception of Hannibal Mabry doing that was, wow, look at this young kid showing more passion than any of the senior players on the pitch.
Yeah.
And then a few games later, I remember this, and Bruno Fernandes is doing it again. And the perception is completely different. It's, oh, he's a senior player and he's causing a fuss. So this is my biggest criticism of the media, and this is why I'm more leaning on the side of United versus the media for this particular section. Is it's only ever a problem when United are losing. Yeah. And they don't hold this consistent line of questioning on whether he's a good leader when United did go on a bit of a run last year, and it all went a bit quiet on the Bruno front. So it's a bit of an assassination of character as soon as things start going bad, and that's my biggest criticism of it. Isaac, if I were to ask you the same thing, I'm guessing you're going to be leaning on the United side, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. If you can try rationalise the media side and then maybe make a verdict on who you're siding with in this scenario?
Well, I without getting into, like putting United's name everywhere to sell more copies sort of discourse, which is something a lot of people would say. Like, often, people do want to read about Manchester United, and when Manchester United don't win, there's a lot to say about them. And when they do win, there's a lot to say about them too, of course. But, I prefer, I don't know, informal sort of media outlet on United Cloud. I prefer talking about United when they win. But yeah, obviously there's a lot to say about United all the time. And I think that's through no one's fault other than their own for being the biggest club in the world, right? So I do have time for the media, and I understand that articles have got to be written. Obviously, a lot of people will. There just seems to be some sort of embellishment, and I don't know. There's not much trust from fans in media at the moment, which is completely fair, I think. I'm definitely on the United side without question. I think that you're right. They do look to kick us when we're down, and I think United have always been kicked when they're down. Because it's interesting. It's content. It's content, right? You see Manchester United not winning matches. You see chaos happening. You see the captain losing his head. You see, whatever else they talk about with Ten Hag's tactics and everything, and it can make sense. But so much of it is unsubstantiated, and a lot of it is said for the sake of saying it because people know that people are interested in it. So I'm definitely on United's side, but I don't really. At the same time, I like all the sympathy that I have for United is kind of counteracted by the fact that it's their own fault for being the biggest club in the world who people care about and want to read about. So, you're going to get stories. I just think it's part and parcel of the game.
Hated, adored, never ignored is the flag that we put up. Moving on to the next topic that we're gonna try rationalize and make a verdict on, and I feel like this one there's more chance that we could make more arguments for the media, and that is the emotional roller coaster that is Marcus Rashford. I was very surprised, Isaac, that he actually came out and spoke about it. I feel like a lot of players haven't really nipped stories at the bud at United, and it's just sort of simmered for a long time. And Rashford coming out and sort of saying his side and making a piece with the Players Tribune, it was surprising to me. How did you feel when you saw the article released?
I mean, I wasn't that surprised because I thought it was only a matter of time because you could tell he's getting frustrated. He had a couple of tweets earlier in the season, where he directly called something out, and I don't want to cause any beef, but I think the way that certain fan channels have dealt with Marcus Rashford this season has been very disingenuous at best. And I think in fan media, his perception is ridiculous. And I looked at the comments on his post, and there were so many people, being, some of the most liked comments were overtly negatively biased. So I kind of get it. I think he must be incredibly frustrated over everything he's had. I really appreciate footballers sort of breaking that fourth wall and being honest. I think it's a really, really good thing to do because so many, the thing I've always said is that the reason why footballers get so much abuse is because people don't view them as humans. They view them as commodities. So they view them as, and, Marcus Rashford said, Marcus Rashford is not him, the man, the 26-year-old from Wythenshawe. He's actually a character, right? Who's talked about in the media. So I guess it gets to a point where you're like, okay, I kind of understand why footballers feel the need to do this. And if anyone's going to do it, if anyone's got the balls to do it and cares enough to do it, it is him. And I do agree. The way people criticize his sort of commitment to the club makes no sense to me because he obviously cares deeply. And I think generally every professional footballer cares very deeply about what they do. Otherwise, it'd be so obvious. Yeah,
to play devil's advocate and sort of make the argument for the media, and also a lot of conversations that internally have been happening between United fans, because there are United fans that are questioning his commitment as well. What's the reason behind that? Like, everyone's saying his body language, his off the field antics. There is reason behind Rashford being questioned, and
no, I agree.
But it's just a case of yeah. What do you think of that?
His body language is never been great, but it's not. I think the worst, just melding it back into the tactical side of things, the worst of Marcus Rashford's body language comes when he's isolated playing as a central striker in games where Manchester United are losing. I don't know who has ever played in that position and consistently demonstrated positive body language with a lack of just service, the the fact that the team are losing all the time, like against Fulham, his body language was awful. I agree. I think it was awful, and he was very dejected. Didn't seem interested. But you can't blame him. Everyone who's been there, Ronaldo, Martial, even Højlund at the start of the season, in this sort of isolated number 9 role at United without the proper structure supporting him, have all looked like frustrated as hell. Like you can't. I don't think it's something unique to Marcus Rashford. And in terms of like him tracking back or whatever, I think he needs to. It's clear that Ten Hag views Rashford as someone who needs to expend his energy only on counter attacks, and he's a very valuable physical profile. I've cut him a lot of slack on the premise that Rashford is somebody who you want for the counter attack. You don't want him to be pressing so much. You do almost have him as a sort of luxury. I don't think his output this season has warranted him being a sort of luxury like that. And he does need to press more. And I think that it is actually a tactical issue that he doesn't press so much. But fundamentally, I think he does care. I think that's ridiculous line of thinking. And
I think you've
so much is tactical.
I think you've created a good segue into the next topic, which is the tactical side of things. And there's reasons that players, are looking dejected when they're having to cover 40 yards of ground every time they lose the ball. And we'll jump onto that just after making a verdict on Marcus Rashford. I think this one is less simple from our point of view than the Bruno Fernandes verdict, which was, Bruno Fernandes deserves the support. Rashford, for me, whilst I echo the same sentiment as you, like I feel like we don't look at footballers as players, as people enough. And I understand that, but he has sent United fans on a bit of an emotional rollercoaster, especially this season, to a point where I've always been Marcus Rashford's, biggest fan, biggest supporter. But there have been times this season where the whispers of what the media say about him has felt real within the stadium, within the fans of Man United, because we're so frustrated with what we're seeing from him. The Belfast stuff, I felt really let down. And I know a lot of United fans felt really let down from that. And I feel like it's getting to a point where a lot of United fans, like myself, are sort of on the teetering, whether they could be swayed into thinking maybe it's just best if we part ways with Marcus Rashford and maybe we should continue supporting them. I haven't teetered onto their parting ways side, but the more and more media have gone through character assassination, and some parts of that have been logical and rational. It's become more of a thought piece in my head rather than me just completely being loyal to Marcus Rashford and no matter what's going on. So verdict wise, I'm still on Marcus Rashford's side, especially with the piece that he's done and sort of saying his side. But what I will say, the caveat to that is, I think if he didn't say anything and it did just simmer on, I was more likely to jump into the camp of maybe it's best we part ways. So I'm happy that he has come out and said something on that. And I feel like that is a big point in his... Well, it's a bit sad to say that a big point in his career is an article that he's done in media, but I think that is a very important piece that he's done.
No, I think the piece is a good piece as well. Like it reads well. The video stuff is good. He comes across as really, really genuine in it. I don't think there's any doubt about that. No, for me, I'm definitely in camp Rashford. In that I do have sympathy for him as a footballer, as a human being, as someone who definitely does, represent Manchester United. I agree that the stuff in Northern Ireland was not great. It's not entirely clear what happened there, and that is frustrating. I most of the time though, I look at his sort of performance and I think that a lot of the reason why he struggled this season is tactical and to do with players being unavailable. So I have sympathy for him on the pitch, but
we'll jump into that now. I think. So, at the risk of us just doing a clean sweep and saying, "Oh, everything's on Man United side," media have no point, and making us look like very biased United fans, we've moved on to a topic that I feel there is a lot more weight on the media side of things, And it sort of links into what Isaac said about, players looking dejected because of tactical reasons. And it's not a case of just players, not showing passion, but actual tactical flaws that are happening and that we're witnessing for the last 6 months at least. And that has been highlighted in media by Jamie Carragher and his piece on Monday Night Football. And it was a very interesting piece. Me and Isaac were talking before recording this. It's to United fans that have been watching Man United for like the last few months, is nothing new. Like, we've seen that vertical compactness is clearly one of our worst traits as a team, as a setup, and also our pressing is one of our worst traits. But what Carragher said is basically highlighting what is wrong with United, and it's put a lot of weight to the questions that we're asking of Erik Ten Hag. And Ten Hag replied to it as well. So, Isaac, just generally, if you want to just sort of run through Carragher's points maybe and Ten Hag's responses of him being subjective rather than objective, what do you make of the whole topic?
Well, I think Jamie Carragher has always had an agenda against Manchester United as a pundit. He's obviously Jamie Carragher, the Liverpool legend or great. I don't know if he considers himself a legend, but what I would say about Carragher is that in this instance, he was absolutely correct in his criticism about United's approach against Fulham. There was one point where he was talking about our out of possession shape immediately after losing the ball, where basically Diogo Dalot and Victor Lindelof as a fullbacks and also Kobbie Mainoo were on the last line, because Ten Hag finds that it's beneficial in his football to overload the last line. He likes to play with as many players as possible in the last line of attack. So they had to sprint so far to get back for the counter-attack at the minute we lose the ball, where Casemiro received it on the turn with basically no credible passing options. It was a bit of a hospital pass by Varane, but even Varane had no options because everyone was stuck on the last line. So basically just completely dissecting our shape in and out of possession all in one. And that was frightening. There was one where he highlighted an Iwobi shot that just never should have happened, talking about the fact that even from the kickoff, Kobbie Mainoo didn't know whether he had to go or stay because it wasn't clear. There was already an overload after 20 seconds of the game being played, which I think sums up United's approach out of possession, which is a mess. And the spaces are too big. It's kind of a weird hybrid between man-to-man and then a mid-block, and then the last line pressing high, which means there's space in the middle, and Casemiro and Mainoo have got to cover so much ground in the middle of the pitch, and they just can't do it because it's not feasible to ask anyone to do that. I do think that when we've got all our players available, it mitigates a lot of the tactical issues, and actually kind of you can get the positives out of having loads of players on the last line and out of having this sort of rock and roll approach. You can actually reap some reward when you've got the full team available. But it's so physically taxing that it's completely unsustainable, because you can't have your best team available, and your players are going to get injured, as they have done all season, trying to keep this up, especially when you had a pre-season where you've been, again, not really having any rest. It's been non-stop. You've had a really busy schedule the last couple of years in football anyway. I think a big part of management these days is managing your players' fitness. And given the sort of lack of coherent squad building and the lack of aligned profiles beyond our first 11 in terms of replacing players and being able to mimic their qualities, even if they're not at the same level, it's got to this situation where Ten Hag is asking far too much of his best players because of this approach, and the players coming in are incapable of doing it. You see how Lindelof's playing left back just completely changes the way that we can approach the game without Luke Shaw. So let alone without somebody who can replicate him.
Yeah, the more and more time goes on, though, it looks more and more, telling on the camp of the media side and criticising Ten Hag, because, you're expecting Ten Hag to recognise the problems that he's had at the start of the season and adapt towards it. But, the fact that we're still playing this rock and roll style where we're having as many men on the final line, me personally, I hate it. Genuinely, I hate the fact of how imbalanced we are in terms of shape at every stage of the game. And it comes to why United are so... Everyone keeps making the same criticism that you don't know what to expect with United. And I think it's, the more and more time goes on, it's because of the shape. You don't know where players are going to be on a consistent basis. and that means in build up you have, you're expecting a moment of magic because there's no formulaic patterns to move the ball into certain areas of the pitch, and at the same time, when we lose possession, there's no formulaic pattern in our shape to sort of cut the pitch in half with our shape, sort of overload one side, keep it compact, and it makes us really easy to play through. So, the more and more time goes on, I'm definitely, I've made the same criticisms of that Carragher has made in that M&F piece for quite a while, and the more and more time goes on, and that piece being sort of out in the media, the more and more I'm thinking like, bloody hell, like Ten Hag, he's been trying the same things and he's got no solutions to it.
No, I think I'm definitely more on Carragher's sort of side in the fact that I don't think his analysis was wrong. I mean, obviously the place from where his analysis may have come may not have been. Maybe Ten Hag does have a point. Maybe he is, maybe slightly biased against United, but I don't think he's wrong. I thought United were much more compact against Forest. It still was not perfect by any means. But obviously, we're operating with Amrabat at left back, and this weird box midfield was formed. But I did think that United were better against Forest in that sense. But still, so many of those problems have just not gone away. They've not gone away all season. They didn't really go away last year. And I think even at the start of the year, Casemiro was sort of, his legs were still there, and he was bailing us out because he could cover all that ground. I actually think if you give Erik Ten Hag, let's say, Declan Rice, or you gave him maybe Amadou Onana at Everton, these sorts of players are probably capable of bailing him out in a lot of these problems, like these physical beasts who are just like can cover so much ground, have got massive legs, but he doesn't have them. He's got to adapt to what he's got.
And in terms of that, even if we did have, say we had every perfect profile of player for the way that United are playing now, I'd still argue that it's not a sustainable approach to try and win matches, to have that many players on the final. Say if we had Tony Cruz, who's one of the best long passers, of our generation, dictating play and having the six players on the final line. Even then, Tony Cruz, who's one of the best passers ever, he's not going to bail us out every time we get the ball into creating a crazy, one-off attack. And I feel like, you look at City, all these players are really top-tier players, but the reason they're top-tier is because they're playing in a system where they know where players are going to be every time they collect the ball. The scanning becomes a lot easier when you know where they're going to be, and you're not overexerting and over-relying on some technical piece of brilliance to sort of bail you out. And the same goes defensively. Even if you did have Declan Rice and Onana, it's not a sustainable way to continue to win the ball back when you're expecting them to bail you out. So, yeah, I think I might have exposed myself, but right now I'm very much on the media side with the criticism they have on Ten Hag, and my verdict in that department, again, open to change. Is a criticism. I feel like United fans are either Ten Hag out, Ten Hag in. I'm not just because I'm taking the side doesn't mean I'm Ten Hag out. It just means this is very justified criticism, and I'm very much on the side of the media and the criticism on this one. What about yourself, Isaac?
Yeah, I agree with you. Let's be able to change. I'm some of the things that Ten Hag says are very different to some of the things that he shows on the pitch. So I'd like to say that I'm on Ten Hag's side, but maybe his response to Carragher demonstrated something of a siege mentality, and no, I'm not going to listen to him and whatever. But no, I think Carragher's criticism and a lot of the criticism of Ten Hag tactically has been valid this season. Thus, United have lost so many games. It's not like it's come from a place of United are third like we were last year and we're doing well. We have lost many matches this season. There's a reason why. So yeah, I think I would say that for once I can join you on the media side.
Well, that's from Mr. Objective and seeing the rational side of things. I feel like the rational is in the court of the media for this situation. So it is difficult to say from both of us, but
Yeah.
it's a very just criticism. We've got two more sort of topic areas, sort of linking to the Ten Hag Carragher piece. Ten Hag came out and said, you have to see the bigger picture. The bigger picture looks very good. I guess it's starting to go into like the mitigating reasons for why we're playing this way when we dissect that comment. Izaak, you touched on a couple of them, sort of the squad depth not being good enough. But what are, if there are any, in your eyes, mitigating reasons for why we're playing like this and things to look forward to in the Ten Hag project under Ten Hag's voice?
Well, I mean, obviously injury is a big one. There's not, if you're looking at the fact that United are kind of being more pragmatic in their build-up approach and not having as many patterns and being a bit more direct, it's obviously because we've had no Martinez, no Casemiro for most of the season, which has been a problem. Casemiro, I say, not in that he's massively helping in build-up, but he is one of our most progressive players, right? So he will switch the play. He will give you, even if he's wasting possession, he will give you progression. I think not having them meant that United were very direct at the start of the year. We had Højlund fighting defenders, trying to use his body to get in these physical duels, and we had this weird sort of compromise where, Onana was probably playing long passes to Højlund rather than when he signed. He probably would have thought he'd be playing nice little neat tiki-taka out the back with Martinez. So I think that was initially one of the biggest shifts that we saw is, the lack of Martinez messed us up. The lack of Shaw messed us up too. We didn't have the left-footed passer at the back. Now, obviously, we had the guys come back and things look good. I thought West Ham was a good starting point. We won 3-0. We had some decent patterns of play. I thought Martinez and Shaw both played really well. Højlund had a lot more possession and obviously has done in the last few games as well, where, he was actually coming in as a net positive sort of link-up player. Obviously, now he's injured too, so that's going to throw it out the window. And we have the same problem where we've got no one. We've got no like sort of minded profile type thing. We've got nobody who can replicate what Højlund does, even to a lower standard, available to us in our squad. And yeah, most of the mitigation and most of the defence that I can give to Ten Hag is that he's inherited a Manchester United squad who for 10 years have been built using different managers' ideas rather than a one coherent plan, which has meant that there's a lot of players at his disposal who simply do not fit the way that he wants to play in terms of backing up his first teamers. So, the best example is Anthony Martial. Martial's a great player, but he should have been sold years ago because he can't rely on him to stay fit. This would be perfect for Martial to come in now, but unfortunately, his legs are cooked. He's done. So, it gets to a point where you're like, okay, I do understand Ten Hag. I do understand. You've got players out and you're struggling to replace them adequately in terms of keeping your tactics the same. But then he isn't helping himself at the same time too. It's a really tough one because I do not understand why he had to play Forson on the right, Garnacho on the left, and Rashford through the middle when he could have played Forson through the middle and he kept Garnacho and Rashford where they were. He kept a good thing going. Like I just think it's like I have sympathy for him and there is mitigation, but the way he's dealt with it is just so baffling.
I guess the verdict question on this one is probably going to be the toughest one of the podcast. Because Ten Hag's basically the comment that we're dissecting is about Ten Hag saying that there is a project and there is a future. He's basically asking for more time. That's the subtext of the comment that he's made there.
For sure.
The verdict question that go on.
Even still though, like there can be a good future without Ten Hag. Like I think there is probably scope for there to be a good future with or without him. Okay, he's asking for more time, but we have got some. And Rashford said it in his Players Tribune piece. To go back to that, we have got a very good team. When our first team is available, our team is very good. And anyone who disagrees with that, I don't think football is the right sport for you. Because I think, you look at where United finished last season, you look at the calibre of some of those players and what they do for their international size and what they've done in their previous clubs. We've got Bruno Fernandes, Mason Mount. Okay, Casemiro and Varane might be at the end of their careers, but obviously great footballers. Marcus Rashford is a game breaker on the highest level when he's at his best. Rasmus Højlund is one of the best young strikers in the world. Martinez is outstanding. Dalot is coming on as one of the most complete right backs you'll find. Luke Shaw is brilliant. Even Onana last season was one of the best goalkeepers in Europe. Like there are good players in this Manchester United squad, and that's why I kind of think, well, yeah, okay, I do have some sympathy in the fact that they've not been available, but the future's bright. Kobbie Mainoo and Alejandro Garnacho as well. Like the future is bright. There is something in that, whether Ten Hag's there or not.
The future's bright, and I'm alluding to the question here of making a verdict. Is the future bright with or without Ten Hag? Right now, as we currently sit just before the Man City game, is is it still Ten Hag as the man leading the project for you, or should we start thinking elsewhere? What is your verdict currently, right now, Isaac?
Um, the future is bright with Ten Hag, but it could very quickly turn quite sour before the end of the season if things don't pick up. It can be bright with Ten Hag, is what I'm going to say.
You're sort of
I'm fence
delving
sitting
into the
though. I'm not
fence
allowed to do
sitting.
this. I'm not allowed to do this, am I?
You're not allowed to do this.
The future can well be bright with Ten Hag. Like it's very possible that the future is bright with Ten Hag. I can't help myself. No.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like I'm gonna say this. I am still waiting for the Ten Hag project to come into fruition.
Yeah.
But I think within the next month of fixtures, I could very well be on the opposite side of that verdict. Is that fence sitting? Am I sitting on a fence
Yeah.
there?
I don't know. I can't. I can't talk about fence sitting. But I think maybe what you're saying is yes, but I could very easily see it being no soon. Like I think you're
Yeah,
basically you actually are picking a side. You're saying it is private Ten Hag, but you're saying that that's not like something that's nailed on. Like it could not be.
yeah, and probably this is the weakest it's ever been in terms of
Yeah,
in terms of
I think so.
like following Ten Hag like and supporting him. This is the weakest it's ever been for me.
Yeah, I think also given the backdrop of all the changes that are impending by Ineos and the fact that there are new ideas and there's new people involved and there is probably a higher standard now and that Ten Hag isn't the guy who's working against the Glazers and doing this project at United, which is for the first time looks like a modern football sort of approach. It is instead actually, well, there's quite a lot of great managers out there, and we're going to have an idea and identity that comes from above, regardless whoever the manager is. And that's something we've never had before. So it gets to the point where you think, okay, is Ten Hag in a position where he's as powerful and untenable as he was maybe before in the eyes of the fans? Absolutely not. No, he's not. So, yeah, I think it's probably, as you say, the first time that you can probably, as a Ten Hag fan or, being a Ten Hag believer or, we have seen some good things from him in his tenure here. We can't forget everything good that we've seen. But it gets to the point where the current climate is not the most Ten Hag friendly, to say the least.
Yep. So that was the sort of verdict, and verdicts on three big issues, three big people at Man
Yeah.
United, and I think we've done the best job we could do in terms of not sitting on the fence.
Yeah.
But Isaac, I think that's the pod wrapped up. How do you
Yeah.
think that went?
It was nice, mate. I enjoyed it. It's hard sometimes when you try and be moderate all the time. Oh my god, the sun is blinding. When you're trying to be so moderate all the time, actually committing to something can be hard in the sense that United is a world of compromises and ifs, buts, and maybes at the moment. So, actually having to pick a side can be hard in the sense that there are so many arguments for all these key issues. Everything that's ever happened this season, there's been significant for and against sort of arguments. So and that's why the fans all online all hate each other at the moment because there's so many arguments because inherently it sets it all up. So yeah, I really enjoyed it, mate, and some good ideas. So yeah, you put all that together in the week. So thank you very much for doing that. It was good.
Good stuff, Isaac. So you have been listening to the United Cloud. Thanks for joining us.